Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I was admiring some of the orchids that I have in bloom this month and some that are doing some interesting things. So I wanted to share some of these with you today. I also got a new plant. If you follow me on Instagram, you may already know what this plant is, but I would like to show that as well, and I'll show that at the very end. So for now, let's get started on some of these plants. Let's start with the Phalaenopsis Liodoro. So this cutie here, I purchased about 2 years ago, and this is the second time I'm seeing it in bloom. The parent plant that I had purchased, I think something was wrong with the crown, and what made things worse was when I got it, I repotted it, and it went from this very moisture retentive medium and I put it into bark, which was a mistake because those roots were very adapted to the high moisture and I lost a lot of those roots. And I had to bring back this plant from where it was. So what it did, the main plant perished, but it did grow three keikis, and that's what I have in here. So I have pretty much a flower spike from each keiki, and I think there are some new ones growing in here as well, like new flower spikes from each keiki. Honestly, I think maybe this one doesn't have a secondary flower spike just yet. But yeah, I've been so excited to see this one in bloom again. It has been such a long time. It has a sweet fragrance. I believe that one of the parent plants is the Phalaenopsis bellina. If not, then the Violacea. And I think that's also why you see like the very star-shaped flower petals compared to the regular Phalaenopsis. But I just think that these flowers are gorgeous. They are a little bit different than the typical Phalaenopsis, and they grow differently. I very much enjoy these. And they are sequential bloomers, so once the flowers do drop, the flower spike will continue to grow and I'll just continuously get more flowers. So I'm really happy to see this and that it is willing to bloom for me again and that it's growing strong in here because it has been quite the rehab project. So that is the first plant that I wanted to show. The next one I wanted to share with you is my Tolumnia. It is the one and only Tolumnia I have that is in a good state. Here is my Tolumnia Jairak Firm Red Devil. So I think the flowers are on its way out, but they're just so cute. I used to have so many. I had the vermilion, which I think was it's one of my favorites. That one and I believe it was called the Pink Lady with like these beautiful spots and pink flowers. I tried to find them at the orchid show I went to, but there weren't many vendors selling Tolumnias, if they were even selling Tolumnias at all. But this is one that I have that has been pretty strong, and I just think that the flowers are just beautiful. They look like little gems, and it's been growing pretty well. I think when I purchased it, it was just like a single fan, like these long ones here, and I've grown 3, 4 other fans since. I would love to rebuild my Tolumnia collection again because they're just so fun to grow. They don't take up too much space. But what I learned this past summer is that they can be quite thirsty, and I think that's where I messed up this year. But that's where I messed up last year during that summer. It got really hot and I wasn't watering enough. And when I did water, I think I watered it poorly. Um, I believe, based on how the leaves were falling apart, that some of the water got into the crowns and um, in between the leaves. I try to avoid that, but they are so tiny and the pot size is pretty small. But, you know, lesson learned. So if I were to get them again, I know what to do for next time. Another plant that I wanted to share, if you saw my Cattleya repotting video, you would have seen that I had my Cattleya Mini Song Fantasy to be repotted. And mainly because I noticed that these leaves were becoming very papery and very sad. And they still are, but I was surprised to see that it actually did bloom. Despite the state that it was in, it actually bloomed. Now, it's still in need of working on some better roots, to be expected, and it is not fully rehydrated yet, but there are some roots in here that are doing the best they can right now. I will have to wait until it grows another pseudo bulb to um, properly grow a better root system. With Cattleyas, they tend to only really grow roots when a new pseudo bulb is growing, or after it is grown. So I will just have to wait for that cycle. But I was very happy to at least get one little flower and that it didn't totally affect the plant too much because I was watching for that. Um, I know it would probably have been better if I had taken off the flower, but I wanted to see it and I was pretty confident that I could bring it back. So that is just one to watch out for, but it's just a pretty purple flower. This one doesn't have a fragrance. And I didn't mention it earlier, but the Tolumnia that I showed earlier also doesn't have a fragrance. But the vibrant purple flower, I just think it's so pretty. It's sort of like done or spent right now, but I will try to post a picture of when it was looking good. Next, I want to show you this plant. It doesn't have a name tag on it right now, but it is the only Vandaceous orchid that I have, so I know exactly what it is. But this is my Renanthera monachica. I really wanted this plant. Was it a year and a half ago? 2 years ago, actually, because it was the last time I went to the SOOS orchid show and sale. That was in 2023. And I purchased this one from Roehampton Orchids, and literally I've been waiting forever for it to just grow or do anything. And initially I was told to keep it bare root and then mist it daily, but I am just not someone to mist plants daily. I don't have the schedule to do that. So what I did was put it in a pot of bark and just kept the bark moist. And I chose the chunkier bark because if it requires that amount of airflow, that was the best way I could do that. And it outgrew the 3-inch pot that I had it in, and then I upped it to this 5-inch pot. And it has been doing well. I could never get this to grow super well, and I had quite a bit of leaf loss at the bottom. I did grow a few over the years, but it just felt like it wasn't doing much, and I didn't know what to do to improve it. So up potting it was one of the reasons, because my understanding is that it does require a bit more water than I guess the typical Vanda orchid. So that's why I have it again in the chunkier bark, but there's still a bit of water at the bottom, so it always has something to drink. And since I've done that with this reservoir of water, I finally have a flower spike. I don't know how well you can see that there, but it's a tiny one, but I've waited so long. I've really wanted this one to bloom because I just think the flowers are just so cute. I believe they are like yellow with red spots, and just they're very like starfish shaped and thinner flowers. I don't know. Typically not my color scheme, but I just think it looks really pretty, especially when it's like a full flush of these flowers. So yeah, I'm really excited to see this flower spike when it does bloom. I'll be sure to share and maybe post some pics on Instagram so you can also see it there. The next plant I would like to show you is my Phalaenopsis Gigabell. So this is a cross, I believe, of the Gigantea and the Bellina. Miss Orchid Girl has one, and that was where my inspiration for this plant originally started, and I really wanted one. And I was able to pick one up from Roehampton Orchids, and I did a terrible job growing these leaves, as you can see. These leaves did come with the plant when I purchased it. When did I get this? Was it maybe a year and a half ago? And I had a thrips infestation in my collection at one point. So when I was doing treatment on all of my plants, which involved a little bit of neem oil, mineral oil, I think I had a bit of alcohol in it too, depending on which rotation I was on. I was treating this plant, whether I saw thrips or not. I wanted it to be safe and got some really ugly leaves. Or I created this mess. And I think some of this is due to overwatering. That is just my guess because I was still getting these weird crinkly leaves. And when I started to slow down on watering, I finally got it to look nice and smooth. And just look how shiny and beautiful this new leaf is. So this was one of the reasons why I liked this Phalaenopsis. It's a little bit different than the typical ones. They have this large, so much larger leaves, more rounder and very shiny. It is more of a polychylous orchid. So that's part of it. On top of that, its parent is the Gigantea. The Phalaenopsis Gigantea can get very large. Like, I believe the leaves can get to about a meter long each. I'm hoping this should not get there that soon. And it is crossed with the Bellina, which is typically a smaller Phalaenopsis. But I am hoping that this stays on the smaller side for as long as it can. But yeah, that was one of the exciting finds that I had with this, was that I can finally grow the leaves where they're looking a lot prettier. The other thing that shocked me is that since I purchased this plant, I have not had a flower spike. I think when I purchased it, it came with one, but after a lot of the fuss and stuff that I was dealing with, it um, it just dried up. But now I just recently saw that there's a flower spike growing. Honestly, I am so excited. I'm so glad I figured this out. Like, this is maybe my most expensive plant in my collection, and because I really wanted it. The blooms look beautiful. The leaves are beautiful to me. I am so excited to see this plant in bloom. Very excited. I believe they grow I believe they're sequential bloomers, kind of like the Bellina. I think the Bellina would have like one or two flowers at a time. I don't remember how the Gigantea blooms, if it's like one or two at a time, but they're a bit more spotty and waxy flowers. And I believe this one should have that appearance with a little bit of that Bellina look. So I'm so excited to see how this one will look. All right, so the last plant I'd like to show you is honestly one of my favorites. I did make a post on this one on Instagram on Valentine's Day, along with a few other plants, because I just think it's gorgeous. It is my Rhyncholaeliocattleya Shinfong unique Tian, and she's huge. She's gorgeous. I have only ever been able to bloom one flower at a time on this plant. And I've owned this plant for, has it been 2 years? 2 or 3 years. I think it's my third year with this plant actually. And I've only gotten it to bloom one flower at a time, and it's like once a year. This plant only blooms about once a year. I think these pseudobulbs take a lot to grow, a lot of energy to grow, and then to create these flowers is a whole other amount of energy. So I don't get many blooms a year, but I could not believe my eyes when I saw 2 buds growing on this plant. I just think it's absolutely insane. I don't know what I've done differently. I'm like trying to still be in view. This plant is huge. I don't know what I've done differently. I have been using a bloom booster, which is a bit different than my usual routine. And I don't know if that is why I ended up with 2 flowers this time. I thought it could only do 1 flower at a time. So maybe it is the maturity of the plant as well. I do have quite a bit of pseudobulbs, but I do wonder if that bloom booster had some impact. And I do wonder, is it possible that I could get more than 2, considering I even got 2? Usually these very large blooming cattleyas do not do many flowers. So I'm curious to push it. It is very much climbing out of its pot, and I would love to repot it. I just wanted to wait for these to bloom, which is why I did not add it to that Cattleya repotting video. But oh my goodness, I'm very pleased to see this one. This one is definitely one of my favorite orchids, or my absolute favorite orchid, actually, just mainly because the blooms are so pretty. I love the frilliness, the little yellow detail on the inside. But on top of that, what makes it just even better is the fragrance. Like this whole time I've been talking, all I'm smelling is this sugar and butter fragrance, and it's very strong. And I guess you can sense like a little bit of a floral scent on top of that, but it is predominantly that sugary, buttery smell. And I really love it. I know it's not for everyone, but it's such a soft, warm scent, fragrance, or feeling, so to speak. So I think that's why this one captures me so much. But I'm very proud to have grown it like this. This was one that was shipped to me from Alberta from a seller on Facebook Marketplace there. So yeah, I'm very happy with this one. Before we wrap, I actually want to share one plant that I got this month. I feel like I've been getting really lucky and finding a lot of my wish list plants this month. But I have a friend who purchases a lot of interesting plants, like rare plants or imported plants and such. And I told her I had been looking for this plant, and if she ever comes across it, to let me know because I would like to get one. And I couldn't believe I couldn't believe how quickly she found one. I was expecting to wait a few months or something like that, but I can't believe she found a Maranta fantasy. This, I think, was one of those plants. I think it was the second plant that I had listed in my wish list video. I just think it's one of those most, it's one of the most gorgeous Marantas I believe that are out there. I love the red Maranta, and I have the silver band as well. And I've always wanted the rabbit tracks. But when I saw this, I was like, I'll take this one over the rabbit tracks because it gives the vibe of the rabbit tracks, but then there's this really beautiful veining. And the rabbit tracks one, I believe there's a variegated version, but it just doesn't hit the same. I don't know if it's something about how it's variegated, why I don't like it as much, but I kind of like the consistency of this one. I guess it doesn't help too that I don't really like many variegated plants. There are some that I like, but for the most part, I kind of like things like this. I like texture and patterns, and this is just giving that. So it's still very young. I believe it's only one plant I have in here, but I'm so excited to grow this. And hopefully I can get it as big and bushy as I have my other Marantas. because I think this would just look beautiful. But yeah, another wish list plant checked off. So those were some of the exciting things going on in my orchid collection that I wanted to share. I do have some others that might be in bloom or growing or do exciting things, but these were sort of the ones that were at the top of the list that were most exciting. And yeah, I really wanted to share. I will probably try to do a bit of an update with what's going on with my orchids and my plants, anything exciting like that, on a more regular basis to keep you posted as to what's going on. But otherwise, that is everything I have for today. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned something new, feel free to hit the like button. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, anything like that, feel free to add them in the comment section below. And subscribe. My aim is to have something up every Tuesday. I will do my best to do so. But otherwise, I hope you have a lovely day and I will see you next time. Goodbye.